This 16th Urban Lunch Talk. Here we gather R&I stakeholders in and around our program that we think should eat lunch together and synthesize their evidence-based knowledge. I'm Caroline. I'm hosting this lunch. I have not cooked because I don't know how to, but I'm an urban geographer and I'm an eager learner, and that's why I'm here. I also have with me my close colleagues, Lina, who's backstage, and Jonas, who's our chat host today. I hope you're all having a nice lunchtime wherever you are. Please let us know in the chat from where you're joining, and keep sharing your comments, ideas, or questions. I myself am joining from Stockholm. And this spring, we're hosting a mini series of lunch talks based on the 3 pillars or areas of priority in an urban partnership that we're working to propose to the European Commission. First out is this specific topic around urban energy transitions and positive energy districts. So we gathered some people around the table for a lunch chat about this. I'd very much like to state that we invited equally many women and men to this talk, but that none of the women could make it. So we invited some more, and still they couldn't make it here. We always try and achieve gender balance in our work, but this time, unfortunately, we didn't make it. Now, before I introduce today's guests, all our guests are welcome to have their camera on already now if you want to. But before we go around the table, we just have someone here who'd like to say welcome, who recorded a greeting for us, and that is Ginter Schwartz, who is the chair of the PED program that we'll be mentioning a little bit.
Good afternoon. My name is Ginter Schwartz. I am the chair of the Positive Energy Districts or PED program. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this round of the Urban Lunch Talks. The PED program is a transnational research and innovation funding program. It was initiated by the European Set Plan and brought together and managed by the JPI Urban Europe. It will also be one of the 3 pillars of the co-funded Horizon Europe partnership entitled Driving Urban Transitions to a Sustainable Future, which is currently under preparation. As a transnational research and innovation program, the PED program is very specific because it has a clear mission. The mission is to bring about 100 climate neutral or even energy positive urban districts or neighborhoods in Europe by 2025. This mission was agreed upon in the Set Plan in 2018, and it will be guiding the actions of our program until 2025. Those actions will be coherent and in support of the right target groups, so that we can reach our goals. In our case, the target groups are those problem owners who actually put money on the table for the creation or renovation of the built environment in our cities. They are city administrations, urban utilities, and real estate developers and owners. We want to come up with results which really work for those 3 groups. We want them to be able to create the urban environment of tomorrow, which is sustainable, livable, inclusive, and climate neutral. For each of our transnational joint cause of funding actions, we will go into consultations with our target groups. Consultations with cities and countries across Europe to come up with a final definition of climate neutral or energy positive urban districts, a definition which works for them in their specific climates and administrative settings. Consultations with urban utilities across Europe provide the local energy and mobility systems needed for climate neutral or energy positive districts. Consultations with the real estate sector to understand the drivers which can convince them that investing in climate neutrality and sustainability is profitable. Consultations with the research and industry to understand their ability to come up with specific solutions for our target groups. In parallel, an ongoing dialogue with our panel of European cities and their citizens will refine our understanding about what a sustainable and livable urban neighborhood should be. We are very lucky that many cities in Europe share our passion for climate neutral and energy positive urban neighborhoods. Our partner countries have put forward those neighborhoods for our pet inventory, which will be growing every year until we reach 100 positive energy districts. Please visit the website of the JPI Urban Europe for more information, and please feel invited to attend our open online workshops where we aim to discuss and broaden our understanding about the fascinating topic of the sustainable, livable, inclusive and climate neutral urban environment of tomorrow. Thank you for your attention and your support.
Thank you, Hans Ginter. And with this, we have someone more with us working tirelessly to achieve 100 positive energy districts. Luckily, you're not alone in this. Christoph Gollner, would you like to take the screen for a second, maybe?
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. And thanks for having me. Welcome, everybody. I will just try to give a short overview, a short framing what we are actually talking about. We are talking about positive energy districts. And we're talking about urban environments that need to be created and made fit for the challenges of the 21st century. That includes technology, that includes the people, as we can see on the picture here. And that includes innovative ways of transforming not only the energy system, but also the approach towards urban development in general. In the PET program that Hans Ginter has mentioned, we've come up with a first rather generic definition of what positive energy districts are. They are energy efficient and energy flexible urban areas which produce net zero greenhouse gas emissions and actively manage an annual local or regional surplus production of renewable energy. They require integration of different systems and infrastructures and interactions between buildings, the users, the regional energy, mobility, and ICT systems, while securing the energy supply and the good life for all in line with social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So a rather broad framework we try to come up here based on the optimization of the basic energy functions, energy efficiency, energy production, and energy flexibility, optimizing them towards climate neutrality and the creation of a local or regional energy surplus. But it is nevertheless very important to also take into account the guiding principles of quality of life, inclusiveness, not leaving people behind, prevention of energy poverty, sustainability, as said, resilience and security of energy supply, especially in the transformation phase. And we need to address the actual enablers. We have to create a political vision and the governance framework. We have to actively involve the problem owners, Hans Ginter mentioned, and the citizens, the public in general. We have to bring forward the integration of energy and urban planning, and we have to make good use and responsible use of ICT and data management. Hans Ginter mentioned the so-called problem owners, city administrations, utilities, real estate. I would also include here the civic society as as a key stakeholder group for bringing forward these transitions. We will not manage to do that without having the citizens on board. And we have to ask the right questions and involve constantly research and innovation for bringing forward this ambitious task. There are several challenges we have to tackle. And I give a short overview, which is probably not comprehensive, but we need to overcome traditional concepts of energy supply towards more flexible energy systems. How do we tackle the interaction with the local opportunities, between the local opportunities and the regional energy grid? We have to provide energy security and prevent energy poverty. Integrated planning has been mentioned, governance. Overcoming silos and cross-sectoral approaches is crucial for a topic like positive energy districts. Especially in Europe, but probably across the world, the major task is transforming the existing stock. So how do we link positive energy districts with urban retrofitting, making cities or urban neighborhoods fit also for climate change, greening strategies, etc. Positive energy districts support a decentralizing approach. How do we integrate top-down versus bottom-up approaches? How do we integrate community-based development into that? I'm mentioning here energy communities as one of the key developments in recent years in Europe. Stakeholder-oriented approach. How do we tackle the diversity of interest between different stakeholders? How do we tackle complex ownership structures? Both regarding, for example, utilities or housing associations, but also when it comes to existing neighborhoods, different owners of buildings. How do we set up processes that can tackle these complex situations? How do we actually get the users on board? Energy transition might not be the sexiest topic for citizen involvement, but nevertheless, we need them. And we need to create a joint ambition between the actual users, the actual people living in the neighborhoods, and urban policies. And that only will work with providing inclusiveness and also communicate individual benefits to the citizens. There is a general challenge in the whole question of definition. I gave a very broad definition, a very broad framework of the PET definition. There is a European ambition, but I'm quite sure actual solutions will be very local, dependent on the local culture, on the local climate, on local regulations, etc., etc. How do we bring that together? The whole issue of responsible use of data management at ICT, I mentioned that. Financing and business models, a key task to mainstream an ambition like positive energy districts. Applying a life cycle approach in all aspects, in all planning phases. And of course, overcoming the barriers of a regulatory framework, mostly in the national context. So we do have the mission of having 100 positive energy districts connected to the energy system in Europe by 2025. But we also have the task to create livable, sustainable, and inclusive urban neighborhoods and understand positive energy districts as part of holistic urban strategies towards climate neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph, for this a little bit of a warm-up also. I heard plenty of how to tackle in there, and I think it's good that we get to have lunch together and hear some stories about these processes of sustainability transition processes in the end. So let's turn to our guests. Christoph, you will come back also later with some reflections from what you heard in the talk, some highlights maybe. Let's see if Goran is here. Are you at our table, Goran?
Yes, I'm here, but for some reason my camera doesn't seem to work.
Okay, we can have a little podcast session then with you and just listen to you. You're a professor of electrical energy systems at Imperial College in London.
Yes.
Yes, and you work with the Step Up project that collaborates also with the Chinese partners on social techno-economic pathways. Goran, would you like to say a few words on what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, in this work, it is linked with what was discussed earlier regarding this focus on the urban systems and how they should evolve given this transition to low carbon future. But just to be potentially a little bit challenging in that context is that, and where we also see an important transition is to do with the resilience of urban energy supply needs to increase significantly and can increase quite cost effectively. Just to give an example, as you know, this is also in China, but also UK and other cities that, for example, London wants to have all buses and taxis electrified in the next 10 years. And that will bring, massive amount of, requirements for electricity, but also there will be batteries, will be more than 40 gigawatts of batteries in there. And one of the aspects, and also there is also decarbonization of on the heat sector, which is that the gas would need to be replaced, and that is kind of where on the demand side where the core aspects are. It may be not necessarily cost effective and appropriate to have all these energy positive districts to be energy positive, because just to give an extreme example is that now in Europe there is now ambition to build more than 400 gigawatts of offshore wind. And I say that's not a kind of local market, because nobody lives in the North Sea. Yeah, I mean, but we want to make use of it. But there is also massive importance of the flexibility which can be provided from local district level. And one aspect which I think would be useful also to have in mind is how we're going to link the local district and also national and international objectives to make sure we are all moving into the right direction in a whole system perspective, rather than in this isolation, which is sometimes the case. I'm not saying this, but this is just to be a bit kind of critical on the extreme side. But there is also potentially massive opportunity to fundamentally change the philosophy of security supply, which you may know it comes, traditionally from having redundancy in assets at the national level. And what is kind of now where we are shifting, and we are providing quite a strong evidence in this area, that rather, this shift from the national level redundancy in assets to smart control of local infrastructure could provide resilience, so that we can actually, this is what we say, use microgrids to provide resilience to megagrids. That is because I say there will be lots of, there will be massive amount of resources in the local level for, say, these batteries and so forth, and we can use that. For example, if there is a say a big weather event, which is being quite a lot, not in Europe, but there was also in Europe, in Spain and Greece, as you know, several weeks ago. But that if some of these events happen, that you can in fact make use of local resources to provide resilience in a smart way. So, for example, that if there is a blackout, again, kind of using London, that we can have, by using local resources, we can get everybody out of the tube, so nobody dies, out of the underground, and also that we can also provide critical services to all hospitals and traffic lights and so forth, so that they will be they would be and that is something which is which is getting on the agenda, and that's what we think is also relevant. This is also which we are working also with colleagues in China, because there is also some interest in this area in Beijing as well. So to try to but this would require significant smart control, because we want to differentiate between essential, non-essential demand and so forth, and that is where we are now moving towards kind of digitalization. And in that context, we also, for example, one aspect is that, again, link now between local, district level and national level and international level. What we demonstrate, for example, that in some of these key decarbonization pathways, that it will be in fact potentially cost effective to invest more in the local area of the district heating and provide heat storage, which could be potentially quite cost effective if it's thermal and so forth. But that would help balancing the service at the national level, which is where the national interest of where the offshore wind and so forth is. So to link the two is something which we think would be useful to put on the agenda.
Okay. Yes. Thank you, Goran. Let's see. I think we'll also turn to you, Jim, from here. Jim Segers, welcome. And you crossed paths with Urban Europe.
Hello.
Hi. Not as a project in one of our calls, but in other activities with the PED program. And you work with the City Mind, close to what we'd like to refer to as energy communities. And you told me that you like the combo of stats and stories, which I'm sure, or I hope that you will come back to. But for now, what are you trying to achieve?
What are we trying to achieve in Brussels? Very practically, we're trying to set up an energy community in one of the more deprived neighborhoods of Brussels, in the Quartier Midi, which is unfortunately still one of the least developed, poorer, popular. There's many names for it. We understand what we mean by disadvantaged neighborhood. And what we try to do there is use the opportunity of an ecological transition to also bring about an economic or a more development transition, in the sense that we want to use the opportunity to create an energy community and have the benefits flow back to the local community. We've coined that an integrated energy community, just to steal the lingo from the large European institutions and bring it back to the very local level. The idea very concretely now is we work in a social housing block. That's the core of the story, of about 100 flats. And they have recently received solar panels on their roof. So what we are setting up now is a group of local residents that can help manage the inflow and outflow of that installation. At the same time, they follow a learning curve of what energy and sustainable energy is, and hopefully over time they will manage the financial side of the story, but also become ambassadors of this story in other parts, in other neighborhoods. We are involved in an JPI PED program that is in the Quartier Nord, a similar profile more or less, but that's the city of Brussels together with cities of Vienna and Stockholm together are trying to think of how can a PED program be implemented in an existing popular deprived neighborhood, taking into account retrofitting and all these difficult things. The City Mind's role in that again is to make sure the voice of the citizens and users is heard. So I think that's really important. The larger perspective of City Mind is we're an NGO in urban development. Our aim is to make urban development everybody's business, and we do that through long-term trajectories, now particularly on energy. Well, we think it's really important to work in the long term, because you have to create trust. You have to create a group that shares a common story, a common language. And that's, I think, for programs like JPI, really interesting. To see that over time, policymakers, probably like some of you, citizens, industry, learn a new language together to address these issues of sustainability, of local development. So that's what we do now. To maybe a what's it called in football, an assist or a cross ball to the discussion future on. There's a definite do is to involve local stakeholders. Maybe not necessarily to tease Christoph a bit, not because we need them, but the other way around. Policymakers, citizens need policymakers. So that's a definite do. Don't, maybe on a bit more serious level, is don't let the tech dictate your pace. Something we see very often is that now is the opportunity, now the world has to change. So now we put on solar panels and we'll explain later to residents what fell on their roof. Now, we very much advocate for the other way around, to say, make sure that people know what's coming, that they adopted it before you implement it. So don't let the tech dictate your pace. And then a dilemma, the dilemma is already mentioned by others. I would translate it as, where would we allow the power to concentrate? Knowing that we pull very hard towards bringing end users, citizens, local residents in, but I'm the last one to convince that not all power should be there. As much as it shouldn't be with industry, shouldn't be with local government. The dilemma is, where do we put it? So that's my dilemma.
Thank you, Jim. I look forward to hearing more do's and don'ts and dilemmas in this talk. Christoph, I hope you're taking notes, because I'm too busy listening. So we have all the do's and don'ts after the talk. Okay, also welcome to Chris Cooper. You're involved with the Crunch project, and the Crunch project works with climate resilient urban nexus choices. And together you investigate food, water, and energy as one complex system. And this project is part of the Sustainable Urbanization Global Initiative call that we at Urban Europe have together with the Belmont Forum in the US. And the Crunch project is in the US and Taiwan and Europe, right? So yeah, and Chris, you work with a digital twin concept and with smart city standards for decision-making processes. Would you like to share a few words? What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, sure. I could even, if I can share my screen. And
yeah.
Firstly, thank you, Caroline, Christoph, and Jim, and our previous other speakers as well. Great company, and thank you for listening to our story about Crunch. Let me share my screen, because we have a couple of pictures that help tell a story. Can you see that we're good to go? Excellent.
Very nice.
Excellent. So as you can see, we have Crunch, the food, water, energy nexus, and the appeal of this project was that word nexus, because it looks great on a Scrabble board, but it's also where I believe data and actionable insight can actually have a real positive impact on the world around us. So the premise is with Crunch, and Crunch is a project led by the University of Portsmouth. My business Know Now, we are one of the industrial partners, an SME. Our focus is on data management standards, data design systems, and holistic systems engineering design for innovation that's working in the smart city arena. We create our own products. We help places become smarter communities through using information to make a positive impact and put smiles on citizens' faces. And we work across the UK, Southeast Asia, and yeah, we have a lot of fun. We're very lucky. So Crunch is a project that's pan-European, with Urban Living Labs in Uppsala, Gdansk, Eindhoven, and Southend-on-Sea, Taipei in Taiwan, and Miami Beach in Florida. And the premise of the food, water, energy nexus is there's only finite resources, or because of things such as climate change, impactful events driven by the food, water, energy conundrum of how do you manage this, how do you respond, how do you conserve, and how do you influence decision makers to make the right decision for a particular place. So Crunch was creating these integrated decision support systems, what we term an IDSS. And through the evolution of the twins and how we, through the evolution of the IDSSs, and because of the way that we aligned from the outset that we would be using data standards. And since the project started in 2018, we're on our last quarter, we finish in March. We'll actually be creating what I'm premising is a digital twin, which is a marketing term, some might say, but it's capturing that zeitgeist moment of we're bringing together digital information for a purpose. So going back to your first question, because that was quite a long, what are we trying to do and what impact have we made? So hopefully we can, how do I? So as I said, we created these integrated decision support services systems, and the IDSS allows stakeholders to better understand. And there's share these slides, and there's some links that you can follow and interact with the data that's there. But one of the things that we were trying to do, and this is coming to sort of those do's and don'ts aspects as well, is I'd recommend that you do have a good set of data principles and a data management framework from the outset, because that forces the mentality of making sure that data always has a purpose. And the end goal is adopting a recommended international standard ISO 37106, because it allows you to create an information marketplace which allows pools of information to be shared securely and seamlessly with other entities, both internally and outside of your IDSS. What's interesting though, from a PED perspective, is that the recognition that there is only so much energy generation consumption that can occur, especially with a couple of the projects. For instance, in Taipei, the energy was coming from the waste, because it was on an old waste management landfill site. But that also dictated what type of development could occur and how would you then use that energy, and it was used to in urban farming. So there was this really interesting circular economy component of energy use with purpose, and it was contained in a local context. But the decision making, and Taipei were probably further ahead in their development than the other European and US partners. I'll get on to Miami shortly, but the interesting thing with Taipei's was that they already had a clear vision as to how they were going to apply the data and what outcome they were looking for. So that's another do: have an outcome, have a good data management framework, which includes good governance so you can manage all of this information. And on that point, Miami is suffering where they have really rich information, a great compelling story, and their problem is with climate change, sea level rise is going to cause most of downtown Miami to actually be underwater. So how do they engineer and how do they start the conversation with the city leaders, with the planners? And because they don't have anyone wanting that data, there's sort of a governance shortfall. So no matter how good your IDSS is and how you're visualizing what's going to happen there, unless you have the captive engagement and the leadership that you're doing this for, you need to not just focus on the technology, which is, I think, something that Jim and Christoph have highlighted. It's got to be there for a need and for a purpose. That's my third one: good governance, data management, and give data a purpose, all enshrined with ISO 37106, which we're also fans of. And if we have time, we can talk about digital twins, but that's another time. Cheers. That's me for now.
Thank you, Chris. I think you all seem to have in common these nexus approaches, actually, that energy topics seem very integral to other areas of action, and that must cause, dilemmas and trade-offs in decision-making processes, surely. Let's just have a poll with all of you participating, and then I think we can do a little Q&A, because I see there are comments in the chat that my colleague Jonas is helping to look at. But for now, you should see a poll on your screen that you can vote in. And here we're asking, based on that, also the European Commission has set the mission for 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. Do you consider a neighborhood-oriented approach like PEDs a useful contribution to achieve climate neutral cities? And how do you think that PEDs can contribute to climate neutrality? And there you can tick many. And you can have a little moment to read the options here. If you have other suggestions, you just put them in the chat. Yes, I think we have a few votes already, so maybe we should just share the results and see what you answered. All right, go PEDs. I'm in favor of this answer. And then it's a little, yeah, kind of even, many topics here, many areas where PEDs can contribute to climate neutrality. We'll save these because it's very useful for us in our work to see your input. Do anyone want to comment here, Jim, Chris, Goran, on the result? Any reflections?
I was asked the question in the chat. Maybe I should address that.
Sure.
Shall I do that? So the question was by Miss or Madam Barr to talk more about the residents managing the solar panels. I think it's the interesting situation is that we could start because there's a housing association who took care of the actual placing of the panels, the technicality, which allows us to respect our slower pace, to set up an organization which practically now works with ambassadors within the community. So there's I think 3, 4, 5 ladies among the 100 flats who are our people inside, and who talk and who slowly set up a group that over time will become incorporated. And in Brussels, where we work, the issue is still, or the opportunity is still, that you get green certificate for producing green energy. So that brings in actual money, tiny bits. So managing that actual money become a way to learn the ropes, to learn to manage the money, and to become self-sustained over time, maybe. But that's a longer pace. And for this, at the moment, we're still learning the ropes, as I said. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and Jonas, you've been hanging out in the chat. I haven't looked very closely yet. Do you want to share any comments, what's going on there, or a question or so?
I do have a couple of questions. And I'll start with the first one that I found in the Q&A, actually. Christoph, and sorry, I forgot who put the question there, but Christoph, when you said new urban environment, I was glad and expecting to see something in closer connection to a new urban design, taking into account the environmental energy sinks and sources, more in connection with the urban agenda for the EU, I guess. Sorry, there wasn't a question there, but maybe is there something that we can connect to the new urban design?
I think there are a lot of aspects to link with urban design, and I think this is also very important. I didn't mention that here specifically, but obviously I'm very much into that, and I don't know if that goes in that direction, but hopefully something like the new European Bauhaus initiative can contribute to bringing especially this aspect forward, bringing together function and design in a new way, in an innovative way. So yes, it is included, but was probably maybe not the first thing I was thinking of. Yes.
All right, and I think this is a question more all round. I guess, how do you address the problem of rebound effects linked to an energy efficiency policy and renewable development policy in urban areas? So, rebound effects.
Anyone curious about that comment?
I will admit I don't know what a rebound effect is, so I can't comment.
I think maybe Christoph is the one actually competent to explain. But I guess as far as I understand it, it's about, for example, when you have energy efficiency, but then you have lots of digital appliances eating up all that kind of saved budget, so to speak.
Yes, I understand it in a similar way, but I don't have the answer to it right now. But it's probably something that needs to be addressed. Yes, I mean there are a lot of things that to bring them into practicality that needs to be addressed, and there are probably more rebound effects that needs to be considered, and we will only learn about them. Yeah, but good point.
There's maybe some experiences I can share in terms of the rebound. The first one was in, we briefly could work in a favela in Rio, where people, thanks to the Lula policy, were entitled to get access to energy for the first time, electricity. So they started buying household appliances, and consumption shot up. So in terms of rebound, there's a lesson to learn. More practically, more closer to home, we've learned that a lot of energy precarious users are actually under consuming, which I think is quite spectacular. They cut off the heating when they should warm up to stay healthy. So I think for me the rebound addresses this broader issue. It's not just about capping consumption or reducing consumption that will solve the whole problem. We need to look at it holistically. That's why we address it integrated. And then the third lesson I wanted to share is that we come together with a lot of experts who we try to explain the difference between kilowatts and kilowatt hours and things. And poorer users are often much more expert in it because they know exactly how far they would stretch their 5 amps they can get on their limited counter. So there are a lot of rebound risks, but there's also a lot of potential. It will balance out, as they say in electricity.
And we were gonna do a little bit more questions later in the program, but it seemed to be so much activity. So Jonas, I don't know if we want to pick up something right now or you want to pick up something later. We can continue, but keep using the chat. We will also keep the chat open a little bit longer when we close at 2. So you have time to exchange there, whatever you want to share with each other. I think we've been discussing a bit now. I think we can go maybe around the lunch table again and just, some of you shared some do's and don'ts quite clearly, but don't hesitate to elaborate a little or share a dilemma. Goran, do you want to share any do's and don'ts that you learned? And then we can go to Chris and then Jim.
Yeah, well, just maybe a couple of issues regarding this, where again, this was in the area, in the work which we've been working with China. This was regarding the electrification of transport sector. And, it would be very important to have advanced concepts of charging those vehicles, because otherwise you would need to dig all the roads in Beijing, in London, to put the new cables in. So there is a very significant interest in to see how this can be optimally and cost effectively decarbonized. The same applies to this heating systems, so that this smart control and decentralized markets and so forth are really the core to make that properly happen. Would be critically important to make that work and enable this cost-effective transition to this system. I saw there was somebody as kind of, and that's not challenge regarding that these regarding what I mentioned, kind of offshore, that there are there is fish stuff is in there, so to make sure that the offshore infrastructure would not make bad aspects on this. And my understanding is that it will not, because now there is a massive interest in and developments in these floating turbines and so forth. But that's something which definitely is useful to have in mind. But also just on this one, to be again a bit again having a little bit of the general national international aspect for decarbonization, I think is still relevant. For example, if we've done some work with the Commission on this area of at a high level, that having local district specific only consideration may not be the most cost effective, because as I mentioned, it's the resource, for example, wind resource in the north is much bigger than the south. But of course, in the south of Europe, for example, there is much more sun than in the UK, for example. Yeah. So that if you go to the same solar panel, if it's in Greece rather than in Finland or UK, or Ireland, you would get 2.5 times more energy from the same solar panel. And and given this analysis demonstrates that although of course the cost of solar is reduced, which is very good, but still there may be interest in having a larger thinking in here. And also there is, for example, this is a bit of extreme case again, but in China, State Grid in China has developed now very, very advanced and cost-effective transmission infrastructure. And it's just a case in which we kind of looked at this a little bit. For example, you could potentially connect, say, Europe with Middle East, and there is a massive sun in there, so you could in fact use solar panel when it's dark in Europe. This is just again to say that that we just need to have in mind some of these that decarbonization is obviously a global perspective, and just to have in mind that that there may be, and the core challenge is how do we get there cost effectively. I completely agree that we need to move to these active, and there is a massive interest and very strong case which we also supported. This is the active buildings and having these less energy consumed the urban areas, but also to have a bit of a and this is where the flexibility and the controllability will be massively important, but also just to have in mind that decarbonization to have a bit of a wider picture, and how are we going to link the local district objectives with national international objectives is something which I think is should be a bit more strong on the agenda.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you, Goran. Chris, and then Jim, just very shortly, do you want to highlight a do or a don't before we move to the next poll?
No, I think I just would like to reiterate that the data management piece, which is really important, which I think is ensuring that whenever you're looking at how do you use information to change behavior, to engage the citizen, and how you are trying to do something different, especially when we're talking about energy generation, energy consumption, and being able to share that data and being able to equitably access that new market if you are creating surplus and you want to give it to someone else. So there's a number of actors in here which we haven't probably considered, which is more pertinent to the next question as well. But the focus on data management, make sure it's citizen engaged, it's privacy by design, so you don't have a big brother view of this, and that's again all enshrined in the standards, and also making sure it's interoperable so it can be easily shared. And I think that this complex set of collaboration that you need to bring these PEDs to fruition is tantamount to making sure that you do things in a fair and equitable way, and standards are an enabler, a facilitator of that. So I'd encourage projects to reach out or go to the standards. There's the links there in my presentation. So yeah, but it's very important.
A strong do.
A strong do, yes, yeah. Please follow standards.
Okay. And Jim, any do or don't you want to highlight?
Well, I wanted to expand a bit on the don't, which is against my nature, but I'll try to fulfill my promise to tell stories. When we worked in Rio, there's a big issue there of theft of electricity, just people hooking up illegally. So we spoke to the vice president of Light-Chi, I should say in Portuguese, which is the distributor, and who said, well, we've tried everything. We've tried putting the high voltage below the low voltage, so people who climb a post just die, but nothing stops them. We've given up on all technical solutions. Now I look at social innovation. So that's why I'm in touch with you. And that was reassuring for us, because that's what we promote the whole time. Make sure that the people are involved before you implement technical solutions. So again, don't let the tech dictate your pace, but look at social innovation to come further and to implement things.
Very interesting. I think with this we can approach poll number 2, because we're curious about what don't we know then. We have experiences, we know a few do's and don'ts in urban transitioning, energy transitioning locally. But what do we need more research and innovation focus on in the coming years? So please share here multiple choices, what you think needs priority to move forward, to approach dilemmas in this field. And yeah, there are many options. Goran, Jim, Chris, any of you want to share your view here on a priority area? Chris, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's one that's not actually on the list, which is the economics of ownership. And maybe that's in the stakeholder piece, but I really think we need to grapple the idea that different parts of the energy infrastructure in a PED context have different half-lives and full lives, and how you own, if you're, for example, the storage on a battery versus the connections and maybe the energy generation on a solar panel. How do you own that panel? If the roof, you don't own the roof, but you want to own the panel. What's the role of contract law to give you rights of the use of the energy, especially if it's a cooperative? And how do you ensure there's transfer as part of the cooperative, but your aspect of your roof may mean that you don't generate as much energy as your neighbor, but are you an equal partner? Or your generation, because your aspect is great at certain times of the year, but not great at other times. I just think we need to look at the ownership aspects, because ironically, and I would say this as a data engineer, the measurement and equitability and transparency is all driven by the information that's generated on the whole systems approach, both consumption. If we're turning people into prosumers, that's producers and consumers, everyone needs to trust the data that's there, both your generation and your consumption, and what happens to the surplus, because that's where some magic can happen in terms of new economic value. And that may or should pay for the whole, but how do you create a big enough collective before it becomes a repeat of the energy majors, when this is truly disruptive and it could delegate and derogate energy generation to the local community, however big you want that community to be. So I'm a big fan of PEDs. We need more of them.
Let me push that one step further, Chris. When one of the experiments we wanted to do with us in the far future is to create an energy commons, where you just measure at the entrance of the community and exit, and within it you just share. That's dreaming, of course, but you should dream to change the world. So.
Well, we will try. I think it's within our grasp. So yeah, I'm with you on this journey. Revolution starts here, everyone.
I'm loving the energy here. Let's see the results of the poll. Okay, R&I focus should go to PEDs in existing neighborhoods, retrofitting was a leader here, and governance design and stakeholder cooperation, and energy flexibility, storage sharing, etc. Okay, let's realize these R&I projects then. Let's get going.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good. That's sorry, just one word to that, because it's I think it has been not enough discussed yet, the whole question of PEDs in existing neighborhoods, because usually the projects start on some kind of greenfield and or brownfield development, but really addressing the need for transforming the existing structures in Europe, probably because it is such a challenge. It's the lower hanging fruit is the new developments, but we need to address that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Christoph, we're gonna go around the table in a little bit, and each guest can have a minute to bring forward maybe a policy or practice recommendation too. We were a bit on the R&I now, but Christoph, do you want to say a few words? You've been listening in mostly. What did you hear in this talk? Anything you want to highlight?
Well, it's very good points. I very much liked what Goran said. That we need to really think of maybe what I intended to say also with the integration of top-down and bottom-up approaches, but it's probably not the same. But to have a clear link between the macro grids and the microgrids. I think this is a very important point. And when we talk about positive energy districts, we're not talking about self-sufficient entities. And this interconnection, to really focus on that interconnection between the regional, national, even international level, I think is a very good, very important point. And Goran made it quite clear. Of course, I liked anything that comes with don't let the tech set the pace and involve people from the beginning. I'm very much in for that. My background is urban planning. So yes, but it's also easier to say than to do. I think this is really an important task. It's not something that just happens. And I'm not so much a data specialist, but I hear Chris that the use of data with a purpose. I'm quite aware of that. This is obviously a critical thing to bring forward, not only in this regard, but of course also very much in this regard. And yeah, thank you for these inputs.
No, thank you, Christoph. And just to answer a question from Sylvia in the Q&A, I said I'd answer it live. Data protection issues are incredibly important, but it's part of a bigger issue around overall cybersecurity. And I'd encourage everyone to look at something called PAS 185 from the British Standards Institute. It talks about having a pervasive view and approach to cybersecurity. So this is not just physical security. This is data security, how you access the data, what you do with it, who has access to it, and it's all enshrined through an active governance process with a continuous service improvement mentality. And there's plenty of stories we can tell, but in the interest of time, need to move on. But yeah, PAS 185 and also PAS 186, which is around protecting the data from you, and you have consent, and that's really important. You as a citizen have consent as per GDPR, and just because there's a sensor that's doing something for you, you need to understand what the purpose of that data is, and you agree to it. If not, you should still be able to enjoy a service, but it may not be so personal as per GDPR. It's really important. Again, standards enshrine and ensure that we're protected as citizens, but we need people to follow them and people to engage in validating that that's right. But no, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It's been really good fun and lovely to meet you all. Thank you.
Of course, Chris, and let's keep talking. We have the chat open for 15 more minutes, and we will share a link to a Slack space where you can continue the conversation if you want to. But before we round up, Jim and Goran, do you want to say anything final, any specific policy recommendation, something like that? Maybe Goran?
Yeah, it was very informative, colleagues. Much appreciate this. And regarding this decentralization and the making use of this digitalized agenda, I think it's really important, should be highlighted. And this also shift towards decentralized energy markets, so to get consumers by making choices drive the development. That's something which, and there is now massive development. You know, that's something which I think was highlighted in here, which I really fully agree with. That's something which needs to be put. And of course, we need also regarding that's again not my field, but it seems to me that we also need to potentially shift from the kind of incremental thinking to more radical thinking, strategic thinking, and that may require some, decisions to be made earlier in order to, to make, proper success going forward. And that seems to me again that potentially may be useful to have on the agenda.
Thank you, Jim. Do you want to share something?
Maybe just a final remark that goes even beyond the PET program, I think, which is this tension between the lived city and the planned city. And it was reassuring to hear Christoph say that as a planner, I understand what you mean, and maybe that's the solution. That's planners incorporate these notions from the bottom up. So we need bottom up planners, Christoph. And it was a great pleasure. Thank you to speak to you all.
The pleasure is all ours. Thank you very much. The next Urban Lunch Talk will be about urban greening and the donut economy on 9th of April. And the one after that is about the 15-minute city. And we have a few more events coming up on this topic. And the recording of this webinar will be available on the event page. So, but for now, thank you, Goran, Chris, and Jim for having lunch with us. We will all switch off our cameras and our audio, but we will stay in the chat for about 15 minutes. And we will share a link to our Slack space where you can initiate conversations or keep exchanging for the time to come. So happy Friday, everyone. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Thank you.